Hi guys, this is Gustavo, the Communications and Technology Chair for the Graduate Business Association, and today we have Alan Shepard, who is one of the students who went out to visit Warren Buffett recently. Now Alan, what was the trip like for you?
That was a fantastic trip. I mean, we packed a lot into 2 days, and part of the takeaway was just traveling with everybody for the program, but obviously the biggest part was being able to see Warren Buffett up close and personal.
Now, what were some of the takeaways or surprises that you took from his meeting?
I don't think anything really surprised me in a big sense, but in terms of big takeaways, the biggest thing I got out of it was just his true love for America's value system, how lucky he feels to have been born in this country, and overall how much he values the set of opportunities that are created in America for both individuals, for entrepreneurs. He really feels and believes it's a country where anybody can make anything of themselves.
Now, was there any expectation of going in there about who you thought Warren Buffett was or how he was going to be? Were those expectations met, or?
I didn't really have any expectations of what to see. I've seen him a lot in interviews and on video. I think the biggest thing that struck me about him is that here's a man who's 80 years old. He's in excellent physical condition. He stood and spoke for over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 5, 2 hours and 10 minutes, without interruption. He did 99% of the talking except for the questions that
we're doing today is actually gathering a few people to learn what they took away from Buffett's trip and what their experience was like. This was the first time the Wisconsin School of Business was invited. And since you were one of the students, I wanted to get your feelings or feedback on what the trip was like for you.
Yeah, the trip was really awesome, actually. I was glad I got the opportunity to go. At first, I thought it was just for people in finance or ASAP, and when I learned it wasn't, I couldn't sign up fast enough. So for me, the trip was really great just to meet Warren Buffett. He's a living legend, and also hear about his life philosophy a little bit. And I really realized that he is focused on really just being disciplined as his philosophy of life, and I thought that was very interesting. He doesn't seem to think that he's that much smarter than anyone else. It's just that he works really hard and has a lot of discipline.
Now, I've asked a few of our peers, which were coming from the Applied Security Analysis Center as well as from the Brand Center, some of the things that surprised them, whether it was from the question and answer session or lunch. Was there anything that took you back from those sessions?
I'm surprised by how humble he is, that his favorite dessert is a root beer float, and that he just doesn't really seem to put a lot of stock in a lot of the material things that a lot of people seem to value.
Now, was there anything else that you walked away from the experience, whether it was the drive up there, I think it was 5 hours maybe, or on the way back?
It's long. Very long. Anything else I took away from it?
Yeah, whether it was having lunch with him or just a bonding experience with a few of your classmates, especially since it's our last year here.
Yeah, it was definitely a great bonding experience with everyone, and we made sure we stopped at a Dairy Queen because Mr. Buffett owns Dairy Queen, and thought that was appropriate for our trip. But I really just enjoyed the opportunity getting to hear his perspective on life and how optimistic he was about the future of America. He seems to think that we're still headed in a great direction.
One of the Brand Center students that came out to visit Warren Buffett. So what were the surprises? What was the experience like for you?
So it was a fantastic experience. I was really surprised at how funny Warren Buffett was. I expected maybe half of the terms to kind of go one in ear and out the other, but I was really engaged the whole time. And so yeah, his humor definitely was a surprise for me.
Was there any the questions or answers that kind of took you by surprise?
Maybe not by surprise, but he's just such a fantastic leader. And some of the things that he talked about, for instance, how our economy will grow and change. He said, if horses could vote, would we have ever invented a tractor? And that stuck with me because of course, no one's going to vote to obsolete themselves, but as a society, we move forward, and there has to be other things in place for those people to move forward.
Now, a few of the students have mentioned a particular focus on family values, and I know that I was personally surprised when he said the biggest decision comes down to who you marry. Mm-hmm. So as a recent wed, what truth did you find in that?
I think absolutely, because no matter what business venture you go on or whether you make a good buy in his case or a bad buy, your partner and your spouse is always going to be there with you. And so it's important to choose the right one who's going to support you no matter what.
Well, hey, Mike, you were one of the students that went out to visit Warren Buffett recently. Now, what was that experience like for you?
For me, it was great. I looked up to Warren for my whole life, ever since I kind of learned about investing. He's been my role model, so it's been awesome. It was awesome to meet him and ask him questions and just kind of see what kind of person he is and what he's like. I wasn't surprised by any of his answers, having followed him for so long. You kind of have a good sense of how he thinks about things, how he looks at the world. So there wasn't a whole lot that I learned about investing from him in this trip. But I was surprised at the kind of person he is, how humble he is. He's got $34 billion and he could do anything he wants in the world. And he's hanging out with a bunch of college kids, talking to us, taking us to lunch. And you know, he could drive fancy cars and have fancy suits, and he doesn't. He's just, you know, okay with having normal things and living a normal life.
I definitely saw that humility and humbleness that you speak to. I'm also interested because if I understand correctly, you actually read the book. So I'm curious to know if there was any expectations or your general thoughts behind the book and who you met.
Yeah. One of the things, Snowball, the big biography about him, talks about his family life. It seems like he put less of an emphasis on family and less of emphasis on having a good marriage. He was kind of work first and let his wife take care of the family. And the whole Q&A thing, he kept emphasizing how important it was to have a good relationship with your wife and spend time with your family and raise your kids, and you're the biggest influence on them. And so I wonder if maybe now that he's older and more experienced and has made a bunch of money, he's reflecting back on now he maybe wishes he would have spent more time with his wife and kids. And so it was interesting to me, someone who has so much money and can do whatever they want was more focused on family time than anything else.
Now, you were also one of the students that actually got to ask Warren a question.
Yes.
If we were to go back, was there any other question that you might want to ask him?
I would have asked him the question differently. The question I asked was about how do you know when you've been patient long enough for the long-term horizon and you're wrong and you should get out of the idea or keep waiting. And it's a question I've had for a long time, and the answer he gave me was exactly what I thought he would have given me, which was not answering my question and telling me about his investment philosophy. I wish that I would have asked if he could tell me about a time where he maybe made an investment and was patient for too long and he should have got out, or eventually decided that he was wrong and got out.
Given that you grew up in Omaha and you're familiar with Warren Buffett from an early start, was there anything that particularly struck out at you or that surprised you from the answer or question session?
Sure. Yeah, Warren Buffett has more energy as an 80-year-old man than I do. He was quick on his feet. He's a quick thinker. He had a ton of energy. It must have been the Diet Cokes or the Cherry Cokes he was drinking all day. But he was enthusiastic and positive and upbeat, and I just hope I have half the energy he does at 80.
You know, one of your other peers from the Applied Security Analysis program also mentioned his youthfulness. I'm curious to know if there was anything around family values or even Walmart that you were kind of surprised by that he mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think many people went actually looking for advice on starting a family, and yet someone from the audience had actually fathered a child rather young, and he was giving him life lessons on what it means to be a good father, how to select a spouse. You hear about Warren Buffett being the most successful investor of all time. You don't expect him to give you family planning advice. But because he knows that has such a big part in forming a person, he would talk about what you look for in a spouse and why that's such a big, important decision in a person's life. The fact that he was just as interested in that as he was in, fixed income yields says a lot about the person as being well-rounded.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share about the trip overall?
I would just like to encourage any first years who didn't get a chance to go this year, that next year you'll have the same opportunity again, and don't pass it up. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. It will change who you are as an investor. It might change who you are as a person. I know it did for me. So when it comes time next year, you should apply.